Okay, good morning and welcome to our webinar this morning. Today we're going to concentrate on how to introduce pace into your recruitment process without cutting corners. So for those of you that don't know us and the first time for you joining, let's just tell you a little bit about us. We are the Curve Group. We are on a mission to create extraordinary people solutions that transform people's working lives. The Curve Group is the largest privately owned recruitment and HR outsourcer in the UK. And as you can see here, we do provide configurable solutions across the entire life cycle. Our outsourced solutions are underpinned by a range of complementary specialist consultancy projects. And we are incredibly proud of what we do and what we deliver. Here is just a small selection of our trophy cabinet that we have. If you were to come to our Curvy offices that we have on display, and as you can see, they range everything from best customer focus all the way through to workplace wellbeing and our regional webinar winner. In addition to that, I'd like to introduce myself. My name's Anna Clapton. I'm the head of HR consultancy, and you can see my contact details there on the screen. And joining me today is Della Worth, who's one of our co-founders and head of projects here at the Curve Group. And what I'm going to do now is hand over to Della, and she's going to talk you through the body of our webinar today. Della, over to you.
Great, thank you for that introduction, Anna. So let's start with what's coming up today. So we've timed this webinar to be 30 minutes, so we will cover this content within that time period. So what we're going to look at is kind of a little bit of a landscape piece about what's happening in the market. We're going to look at some key things that we're going to be covering off across this webinar. We'll look at the recruitment process and some points within that about the interview team and training. We've got a section on competency-based interviews, but probably my passion for those will come across by the end of this webinar. And then also some kind of tips, really, some practical guides as to how you can design your own competency-based framework. And then we'll do a wrap-up and any Q&A at the end. So Anna will come back in. She's not going anywhere, she's still there. But she'll come back in at the end and host the Q&A. So any questions you've got, then we'll be very happy to answer those at the end. So in terms of what's happening in the market, so I think none of these are probably any surprise as we pick up and read the news at the moment. So 41% of the global workforce are considering a job change in the next year, and there are various documented reasons for that. And the number of open vacancies is the highest it's been 23 years. It's about 1 million number mentioned very recently. The supply of workers has sharply declined, and actually it's its quickest rate of decline since May 2017, quite a while. We've also seen remote working happening. Obviously that's proven to work in some companies, so that's actually giving people more opportunities for candidates who previously weren't able to do that, actually now consider moving company. And also Brexit, the freedom of movement for EU citizens and the end of the points-based immigration, or the start of the points-based immigration system being in place. So all of that is kind of our economic landscape. And then what are we finding as a business? What is it that we're seeing as affecting us on a day-to-day basis? So there's lots of headhunting going on. It's increasing. We're also finding that inflated salaries are happening to kind of displace people, and we're kind of counter offer is definitely very prevalent. Whether that's someone that's looking at 2 roles at the same time or a counter offer from current employer. Also, our dropout rates, we're seeing the market are the highest. I think our business has been around for nearly 18 years. It's certainly the highest we've ever seen that. So candidates being very excited and very keen for a role, but actually dropping out at some point in the process without any explanation really as to why. And also the employer brand and the employee value proposition is also under pressure. Really companies trying to keep up to pace with what's happening and making sure that they are the most attractive to future employees. So we're going to look at some key things over the next 20 or so minutes, and that's around kind of balancing pace, but also overall candidate experience. I think trying to keep the two running in parallel. We're going to look at what a good recruitment process could look like and some ideas about how maybe you could challenge your own process. We're going to look at how introducing some structure aids consistency, and also I will challenge gives people more confidence as well. I'll reveal why I believe competency interviews work, and then we're going to look at some types of competency questions and indeed the structure. So if the kind of recruitment process and looking at the key things within there is what we need people to be is aware that, assume that everyone has other options. That would be my number one thing. So accept they'll be looking. The whole process counts, and that matters from the minute that they see an advert from you to the way that they get onboarded and the offer process. Get the offer out quickly. We're still seeing companies that are taking a week to get an offer letter out. We need to make sure that we have that offer letter in front as soon as we can, and then making sure that onboarding. Around the edge of this slide, I put here about high engagement. And for me, that is about every single step of the process. Changing voices, the recruiter might have fantastic rapport with the candidate, but actually at the point when the line manager needs to step in and maybe have a different conversation or just add some value to that. So really think about how we can have a high engagement process and maybe look at those steps and have a review to make sure the process that we're running is actually fit for purpose. So in terms of then running that good recruitment process, so I think these are kind of my checklist about what to review. So firstly, who is involved? And the single things that we find in terms of the recruitment pace and having barriers is getting the right people involved. Second part of that is great to have the right people involved, but do they have the sufficient training? Are they in sales mode? We still find far too many people not hiring that don't recognise the fact that it is a mutual thing. It's not just about the candidate selling themselves to you, it's also about you selling your business to the candidate. Is there a clear process for everyone to follow? Does the candidate understand what the journey is going to be? Is it a 2-stage, a 3-stage, a 1-stage process? And they know the commitment they're being asked from at the beginning. And also are the team aware? So there's clarity about how quickly the process can flow. And there's not something where someone's waiting for a decision because actually everyone knows the process. Are good decision skills, making skills backed up also by data? And know what the compromise areas are. For me, we have a lot of clients that say to us, we are recruiting for personality, not just experience. Great. So where are the areas of compromise? If we find someone that's a 6 out of 10, but they've got the right cultural fit, does that make them the right candidate? So give people the confidence of knowing where the areas you are prepared to compromise on. So I've talked about the training of the interview team. Before I move on to some key points, for me, this is something that's really important. If the Daily Mail turned up at a company door and said, can we have a quote from somebody? What wouldn't happen is, you can go, off you go, anyone can go and do it. Of course we wouldn't. We'd have the right trained person to do the interview, to do the quote, in order to have that to be published. However, we're quite prepared when people reach a certain level in an organisation to say, right, you've reached that level now, off you go, you can interview. So for me, it is also about understanding exactly how do we want the interview to happen. And I've put here interview team. Again, not having the right level of competence and the right people and the amount of people involved could be one of the ways that recruitment processes are a lot slower, because we're reliant maybe on too few people to actually complete the process. So having a look, are there more junior members of the team that could step up and do first stage interviews, then needing more senior members of the team to do that final interview process. And the first thing to do is to have a look at who could be competent and who could be trained to do interviewing. So for me, the key things that we would cover, this is something that we do as a business. We'd look at company culture and values. We'd look at equality and diversity and really trying to remove unconscious bias. The planning and preparation, both from a line manager or an interviewer point of view, but also what are we asking our interviewees to bring to the interview. Using a range of effective question techniques. So whilst I'm going to talk in a moment about competency-based interviews, I'm not recommending personally that you should have the whole of your interview just about competency-based interview techniques. It should actually be a nice balance between a range of things, so some behavioural stuff and how do you feel, what is it that motivates you about business? All those good questions should be incorporated, but also understanding there's a core element that needs to be fixed as well. Use interview templates to structure the interview and provide feedback. And lastly, information gathering skills to make selection decisions based on good quality evidence. I believe that actually if you ask someone why they don't feel comfortable interviewing, it's mainly a confidence thing. Actually, they're competent in many other areas of their work, but actually, how do we give them that confidence? Well, we train them well. The other thing we do is create a structure for them. So there's a framework, so they're not just being asked to kind of have a gut feel of how you felt that went or how do you assess that candidate. If we have a framework, it will give them more confidence in order for them to make decisions, and it gives them that data so that we know that we're making decisions based on facts rather than on how people feel. That's very important, how people feel, but we also need data to back it up. So if we can achieve those things, then people will feel more confident in actually conducting interviews. That, and of course, when we've hired someone fantastic and we see them growing within our businesses. So as I said, I will kind of spend a bit of time talking about competency-based interviews and why they are something that I think would add value in a recruitment process, would add that pace, would give us the ability to train more people into this way of using the data, using question techniques in order to come up with a set of data that we can evaluate against our set criteria. When you actually look and do a Google search on types of interviews, they actually tend to focus more on virtual or face-to-face, telephone or otherwise, or about groups of people. It talks about panel or singular. There's actually not a lot of data about what we actually can use as content in our interviewing. So competency-based for me works well because we're doing this either virtually or face-to-face. We're doing it in a panel setting or we're doing it singular. It works across the board. So why do they work? They create that consistency. One suggestion I'd have if you wanted to look at how you incorporate competency-based interviews into your business is start off with maybe 3 to 5 competency questions. It doesn't need to be the whole interview structured that way. But if every single person that interviews someone in your business actually asks the same 3 to 5 questions, that would give you a whole set of data that you can evaluate. It proves that actually you are being impartial. It supports that. It means the process is fairer because everyone is being asked the same set of questions. As I said, it works equally as well virtually as it does face-to-face. So that's some of the reasons why competency-based interviewing could really work for businesses. So when we talk about designing competency framework, and I will come on to that in a moment of how we do it, but just wanted us to think about in a bit more detail around the kind of the why really. And I think the other thing to consider is what you are doing by having a fairer process is you're allowing for that challenge to happen. So you're allowing someone to evaluate one CV against the next, another candidate against someone else. It means that if someone starts, we all do this, but maybe someone comes in for an interview and the rapport's great. It's feeling really good. There's something about this candidate that you feel really works well in the organisation. Sometimes our temptation then is just to make it quite easy and ask the nice questions. But actually, if everyone has to go then and answer, once that rapport building's got up, that's really important. I've seen it go really badly wrong when we just don't build that rapport, it's straight in. to the competency-based questions. But once we build that rapport, if we know there's an expectation of there being an element of competency-based set questions, then it means then that everybody has that same experience. And again, we're going back to the same data. Also, if we ask somebody as a question, would you say you're good at decision making? They're not going to say no, unless they really want to. So they'll say they're brilliant at it. So actually, by actually saying that, you know, asking a question that comes up with that, give me an example that shows that you're good at decision making. And if they then go, oh, and can't come up with the answer, then we potentially have some evidence that we can base that decision on. So there, for me, is a kind of key reasons why. So let's look at, if you wanted to build your own competency framework, how would you do that? So there are kind of three ways you could do it. You could look at your company values. For example, your company value is integrity. So ask a question around integrity. Your company value is about passion. Ask a question around that. You may well look at individual job descriptions and have a suite of competency-based questions for each different job description that you have within your business. Or you may have banding and say, for all of our leadership roles, we have these questions we're going to ask. For all of our junior level roles, for all our administration roles, etc. So you could have those per role type. Or, of course, you can have a mixture of the above. For me, if you haven't got competency-based interview question technique into your process at the moment, go with something that gives you a lower level of entry. So company values, something that you know is consistent across every single role that you recruit into your business. Once you go down the route of individual job descriptions, that makes it quite a challenge and could be another barrier that means you're not introducing that pace. So if you're starting from a clean sheet of paper, it's about company values and thinking about how do you bring those to life, because you're kind of then bringing those to life as part of the recruitment process, but also know that everyone you recruit into your business, it is something that we could be consistent about and make sure that everyone has those. So how do you then go around thinking about those questions? Look no further than a Google search. It is that easy. You literally put in the words, give me examples of competency questions, and you'll come up with something that looks like this. So this one here is around it's a sort of mixture really between, probably you could have those as values questions, but also around the key attributes we're looking at for a person to be successful in our business. So there are reams and reams of them on the internet. So just kind of have a look and find the ones that work for you, because I think that sometimes, again, I've seen people kind of go, yeah, we really want competency questions, but actually when it comes to it, the bit that's hardest is actually getting them right. And the ones that find it hardest is where they try to be quite specific and get them down to each individual role. Absolutely, that is great practice, but just as a starter, just have some that are working for you. So then what you need to do is design your template, scoring matrix, and also your feedback methodology. Funnily enough, I'm going to say exactly the same thing. Keep it really, really simple here. So choose whether you want Word or Excel. Other methodologies might be available, but those are the two that we seem to use the most. And then you can do a really simple scoring mechanism. So one where the person demonstrates nothing in their answer, to three where they exceed the expectations. So this is the simplest form of feedback and scoring that we actually do. However, I just wanted to share with you something that's a bit more advanced. And this could be where you then have a 5-to-1 rating. And actually what you're looking at is giving more definition to the person that is actually interviewing. And behind each of those scores, there does need to be, so if your question is around the integrity piece, you do need to come up with, and what we're looking for. So that's fine to have the question, but we need to then give the interviewer a guide as to what does good look like, because it's back to that interpretation. And if we're introducing a competency-based process, then what we need to make sure is we give them that person all the data so they can evaluate against it. So here you may have something that gives them what actual the scoring would be on a general basis, and also kind of put it in that kind of faultless or never, just some kind of ideas. But you'd also need to break down what we're looking for, just to give that interviewer all of the tools that they need in order to be able to evaluate correctly. So when we talk to candidates about the preparation for interviews, we do go through the STAR technique. And it's kind of one of the things that I thought about when we were prepping candidates. It's part of it is almost like giving them the answer I was worried about, but actually it's not. It's about saying to them, you need to structure your answer in such a way that it makes the interviewer really be able to understand how you're answering it. And if you get a candidate that just says, right, well, we achieved double-digit growth last year and it was amazing. Right, that's the result. Great. We now know you're in a business that was growing. What we don't have, though, is any idea on double-digit growth from what? What did you actually do within that? So we do talk to candidates about using the STAR technique, and the reason why I'm raising it now as part of the kind of focusing on people that might be interviewing is it is relevant, because actually those that you then interview that have taken the feedback from the recruitment team to say this is how you should structure it. We've not told them how to answer the question, we've just told them how to structure it. It will make it an easy experience for you as a recruiter or a hiring manager sitting there, and it will also mean that they then are more eloquent about how they're doing it. And thirdly, it means that if they're doing it a structured way, it's much easier for you to score them against the framework as well, rather than kind of being sent in different directions. So this is how we use the STAR technique in our competency-based interviews. So final thoughts, and then we'll hand over if anyone has any questions. I'm not sure Anna is keeping an eye on the chat box, and we can have a look at those and answer those, of course. So just to kind of summarise really what I've covered off in the time that we've spent together today, I think for me, do review your process, but with two lenses on it really. One is engagement. Do we have a high engagement process? And secondly, where are the areas that we have barriers? Is it because one person's doing the final interviews and they're backed up and their diary is hideous? You know, what is it that's stopping people being kind of pushed into our business at some point and exiting out in a positive way in the speediest possible time to make sure we are indeed an employer of choice? Look at that engagement, think about how can we make sure that at every stage in the process that we are engaging in the right way, and they've got different voices as well. It doesn't need to be voices always physical voices, it could be materials we're sending out, just anything we can do to make sure that candidate is thinking of us in the best possible way. Look at the interview team. Do they need any further skills in order for them to be successful and have more confidence? Think about introducing a competency framework. If you haven't got one now, keep it really simple to start with, get everyone used to it, and then you can expand upon it afterwards. And then lastly, yes, you could look at the process now, but the other thing is to keep reviewing and challenging, because what works today in this current market for me is about putting a pacey, high engaged process in with the right people that are trained. That might not be the demand in 2022. So it's also about making sure that we keep reviewing and challenging the process so it's the best we can be to respond to the market conditions. Thank you.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is just take the opportunity to have a look and see if you've got any Q&A. So there's a number of ways that you can do this. By all means, just click on the raise your hand button on the bottom of your toolbar, and then we can open up the mics for you. Or alternatively, you can use the Q&A option or you can use the chat facility. I'll just give you a couple of minutes to see if there are any questions that are coming through. It may be that alternatively you'd rather take it offline, in which case please do take a note of our numbers or our email addresses, and we'd be more than happy to come back to you on an individual basis. So Della, I just give it a couple of seconds. I can't see anything else come in at the moment. So if you'd just like to move forward for me. Just as a reminder, there are a couple of other things that we can help you with, just some of the more recent kind of webinars that we've also been running as well. So we can audit your current recruitment process, and we can look at your processes and your practices. We can develop and train out new and improved recruitment processes within your team, and we can manage and deliver your recruitment process on your behalf. And that can include everything end to end, from the resourcing all the way through to the onboarding as well. And then finally, as Christmas is coming, I'm allowed to say that now, I think, we will be taking a break in December, and we will have a break from our normal webinars. Just as a way of reminder though, all of our previous webinars can be found on our Insights page at the Curve Group, and then up and coming in the new year, which seems strange to be thinking about January already, but we've got how to deliver an effective onboarding process for new starters, one-to-ones and managing difficult conversations, and real strategies that enable you to nurture and land talent going forward. So some really exciting opportunities and webinars coming up in the new year as well. So finally, all that's left for me to say on behalf of Della and myself is thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you with you, having you with us this morning. As I've said, if you do have any questions or if there's anything else you want to know around any of the topics that we've talked about this morning, then please do reach out to us. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Bye.